Before comic book movies ruled Hollywood, there was a purple-suited hero whose movie journey involved legendary spaghetti western directors, muscle-building transformations, lion wrestling scenes that never made it to theaters, and a Playboy Mansion masquerading as high society. From bizarre casting battles to costume catastrophes and promotional campaigns featuring wolves at Swedish premieres, this cult classic superhero film hides secrets stranger than fiction. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about The Phantom. Sergio Leone almost directed. It long before Billy Zane donned the purple suit, one of cinema's most legendary directors had his sights set on bringing The Phantom to the big screen. Sergio Leone, the mastermind behind iconic spaghetti westerns like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in the West, expressed serious interest in directing a Phantom adaptation and took concrete steps toward making it happen. During the 1980s, Leone didn't just casually mention the project in passing interviews. He actually began writing a screenplay based on Lee Falk's comic strip character and went as far as scouting potential filming locations for what would have been a dramatically different take on The Ghost Who Walks. This wasn't a fleeting Hollywood rumor or wishful thinking from fans, but a genuine development project that Leone was actively pursuing. What makes this even more intriguing is that Leone had ambitious plans beyond just The Phantom. He intended to follow up his purple-suited superhero film with an adaptation of another Lee Falk creation, Mandrake the Magician, who is often credited as the first superhero character in comic history. Leone was clearly drawn to these classic pulp heroes and saw potential in bringing their old-fashioned adventure stories to life through his distinctive cinematic vision. Unfortunately for film fans who can only imagine what a Leone-directed Phantom might have looked like, the project never moved beyond the development stage. Leone eventually abandoned The Phantom to pursue other commitments, and his planned Mandrake the Magician follow-up was never finalized either. The director's interest in comic book adaptations remains one of the most fascinating what-if scenarios in superhero cinema history. Leone's involvement would have brought a completely different sensibility to the character, potentially transforming The Phantom from the campy adventure it became into something far more operatic and stylized, matching the director's signature approach to storytelling and visual composition. Billy Zane beat Bruce Campbell in epic casting battle. The casting process for The Phantom came down to an intense showdown between two very different actors, with cult horror icon Bruce Campbell ultimately losing the purple suit to Billy Zane in what became one of Hollywood's more unusual audition experiences. Campbell, who had gained legendary status among genre fans for his role as Ash. Williams in the Evil Dead franchise made it all the way to the final round of auditions alongside Zane, creating a fascinating contrast between two completely different acting styles and screen presences. In later interviews, Campbell opened up about the experience and revealed just how complicated the casting process had become by the time he reached the final stages. He described the audition process as unusually political rather than focused on actual acting ability, which clearly frustrated the veteran performer who was used to more straightforward casting decisions. Campbell explained that he had to audition for what seemed like an endless parade of studio executives, with each round becoming progressively more tense and formal as he moved up the Hollywood hierarchy. The process required Campbell to prove himself to multiple layers of decision-makers at Paramount Pictures, which he found particularly challenging since it seemed to prioritize studio politics over the kind of performance-based evaluation he was accustomed to in his career. He later admitted that he didn't really enjoy the experience very much, largely because of how removed it felt from the actual craft of acting and character development. What makes this casting battle even more intriguing is that Campbell and Zane represented completely different approaches to the character. Campbell would have brought his trademark combination of physical comedy and horror movie sensibilities to the role, while Zane offered the more traditional leading man qualities that the studio ultimately decided they wanted for their big-budget superhero adaptation. Director Simon Windsor specifically chose Zane because he wanted the movie itself to be the main attraction rather than relying on established star power. The Playboy Mansion played a wealthy family home. One of the most unexpected filming locations in The Phantom turned out to be Hugh Hefner's legendary Playboy Mansion, which served as the exterior shots for the wealthy Palmer family estate throughout the movie. This wasn't just a convenient Hollywood location choice, but rather the result of Hefner's genuine enthusiasm for Lee Falk's comic strip character, as the Playboy founder was reportedly a huge fan of The Phantom and had been following the character's adventures for decades. The mansion's distinctive architecture and luxurious grounds provided the perfect backdrop for the scenes involving Diana Palmer's upper-class family, lending an authentic sense of old-money elegance that the production needed to establish the Palmer family's social status in 1930s New York society. The filmmakers were able to capture the mansion's iconic facade and elaborate landscaping to create the impression of a wealthy newspaper publisher's estate without having to construct expensive sets or search for other suitable locations. What makes this filming arrangement truly remarkable is that The Phantom holds the distinction of being the only feature film ever granted permission to shoot at the famous Holmby Hills property. Despite the mansion's prominent place in popular culture and its frequent appearances in documentaries and television specials about Hefner and Playboy, the property had maintained a strict policy against allowing fictional film productions to use the location for commercial purposes. Hefner's personal connection to the Phantom character proved to be the key factor that opened doors for the production team, demonstrating just how deeply the comic strip had penetrated American popular culture across different demographics and social circles. The Playboy founder's willingness to make an exception to his usual policies specifically for this superhero adaptation shows the lasting impact that Lee Falk's creation had on readers who grew up following the ghost who walks through his various adventures in newspapers around the world. Zane bought sushi in full Phantom costume. Billy Zane developed one of the most amusing habits during the filming of The Phantom, regularly venturing out to local sushi restaurants and grocery stores while still dressed in his complete purple superhero costume between takes. This wasn't just an occasional occurrence or a publicity stunt, but rather became Zane's regular routine throughout the production, as he apparently had quite an appetite for Japanese cuisine and didn't want to waste time changing out of his elaborate Phantom outfit every time he got hungry. Picture the scene that greeted unsuspecting shoppers and restaurant patrons when a 6-foot-tall man in a skin-tight purple bodysuit, complete with the character's distinctive black eye mask and gun belt, would casually stroll into their local establishment to order takeout sushi. The Phantom's costume was particularly striking because of its vivid purple color and form-fitting design, making it impossible for Zane to blend in or go unnoticed during these food runs, yet he seemed completely comfortable making these public appearances in full character gear. The production crew apparently became accustomed to Zane's unusual dining habits, and his sushi runs became something of a regular occurrence that people on set came to expect during filming breaks. This behavior gives insight into how comfortable Zane had become wearing the elaborate costume, treating it almost like regular clothing rather than the complex piece of movie equipment that it actually was. What makes this story even more entertaining is that Zane was clearly committed to staying in character and maintaining the physical presence of the Phantom even during his off-camera moments, suggesting that he had fully embraced the role both mentally and physically. The fact that he didn't seem bothered by the attention or stares his costume would inevitably attract shows just how dedicated he was to the character and how natural the outfit had become for him during the months of filming. Jim Henson's Creature Shop made the suit. The iconic purple costume that defined Billy Zane's portrayal of the Phantom was created by one of the most unexpected companies in Hollywood special effects history. Jim Henson's Creature Shop, the same organization responsible for bringing beloved characters like Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, and countless other Muppets to life, was tasked with designing and constructing the superhero's distinctive outfit for the 1996 film. This collaboration represented a fascinating departure from the Creature Shop's usual work with puppets and animatronic characters, as they applied their expertise in fabric manipulation and costume construction to create a form-fitting superhero suit that would need to withstand the rigors of extensive action sequences and stunt work. The company's extensive experience with creating durable, flexible costumes for puppet performers translated surprisingly well to the demands of superhero filmmaking. The final costume featured some remarkably sophisticated construction techniques that prioritized both visual impact and actor comfort during the demanding filming schedule. The suit was built using neoprene stretch rubber as its primary material, which provided the skin-tight appearance that was essential to the character's comic book aesthetic while still allowing Zane the flexibility he needed to perform his own stunts and action sequences throughout the production. Perhaps most importantly for Zane's comfort during the long days of filming, the creature shop lined the interior of the costume with suede, creating a soft barrier between the actor's skin and the potentially uncomfortable rubber material. This thoughtful design choice allowed Zane to wear the complete outfit for extended periods without experiencing the chafing or discomfort that might have resulted from direct contact with the neoprene surface. The costume was expertly constructed in 3 separate pieces from custom-printed stretch fabric with an extremely fine mesh material layered over the top to create the distinctive texture and appearance that made the Phantom suit so visually striking on screen. The Phantom's striped underwear was too silly. One of the most challenging design decisions for the Phantom costume involved the character's most distinctive and potentially problematic feature from the original comic strips. The Phantom's signature striped underwear, which had been a trademark element of his appearance since Lee Falk first created the character in 1936, presented the filmmakers with a serious dilemma about how to translate classic comic book aesthetics to live-action cinema without losing audience credibility. The costume designers and filmmakers didn't simply dismiss this iconic element without consideration, as they understood its importance to longtime fans of the comic strip who would expect certain visual elements to remain faithful to the source material. Instead, they actually went through the process of creating test versions of the costume that included the character's traditional striped shorts worn over his purple bodysuit, essentially recreating the exact look that readers had been seeing in newspapers for 60 years. However, when the production team saw how the striped underwear looked on Billy Zane during costume tests and early filming attempts, they quickly realized that what worked perfectly fine in 2-dimensional comic art simply didn't translate effectively to live-action filmmaking. The striped pattern created a visual effect that made the costume appear more comedic than heroic, undermining the serious adventure tone that director Simon Wincer was trying to achieve for the movie. The decision to remove the striped underwear element from the final costume design was reportedly made fairly early in the production process, as the filmmakers recognized that audiences in 1996 might find it difficult to take seriously a superhero who appeared to be wearing his underwear on the outside of his costume. This represented one of several compromises the production made between comic book authenticity and cinematic believability, as they tried to balance respect for the source material with the practical demands of creating a convincing, live-action superhero film. A lion wrestling scene was cut. The final day of filming for The Phantom concluded with one of the most dangerous and expensive sequences in the entire production, as Billy Zane actually wrestled with a real lion in a specially constructed set in Los Angeles on February 13, 1996. This wasn't a quick insert shot or a brief moment, but rather a full action sequence that required extensive safety precautions, animal handlers, and multiple camera angles to capture what the filmmakers envisioned as a dramatic highlight of the movie. The lion wrestling scene represented a significant investment in both time and money for the production, requiring the crew to return to Los Angeles after completing most of their location work in Thailand and Australia, specifically to film this elaborate sequence. The logistics of working with a live lion meant that extensive safety protocols had to be established, with professional animal trainers and handlers on set to ensure both Zane's safety and the welfare of the animal throughout the filming process. Despite all the effort, expense, and genuine danger involved in creating this memorable sequence, the entire lion wrestling scene was ultimately removed from the final cut of the movie during the editing process. The decision to cut such an elaborate and costly sequence suggests that the filmmakers felt it either disrupted the pacing of the story or didn't fit with the overall tone they were trying to achieve in the finished film. Interestingly, While moviegoers never got to see this dramatic confrontation between the Phantom and a lion in theaters, the footage wasn't completely wasted. Television trailers and promotional spots for the movie actually featured brief glimpses of Zane fighting the lion, giving audiences a tantalizing preview of action that they would never see in the actual film. This created an unusual situation where the marketing materials promised viewers an exciting sequence that had been removed from the movie they were being encouraged to see. President Clinton congratulated the creator. When The Phantom premiered in theaters during June of 1996, comic strip creator Lee Falk received an unexpected honor that demonstrated just how deeply his character had penetrated American popular culture over the previous 60 years. President Bill Clinton took the time to write a personal letter to Falk, specifically congratulating him on his remarkable achievements in creating and developing the Phantom character throughout his long career as a comic strip writer and creator. This presidential recognition was particularly meaningful, given that Falk had been working on the Phantom since 1936, making it one of the longest-running comic strips in American newspaper history by the time the movie was released. The fact that the sitting President of the United States felt compelled to acknowledge Falk's contributions to American popular culture speaks to the widespread impact that The Phantom had achieved across multiple generations of readers who had grown up following the adventures of the Ghost Who Walks. The timing of Clinton's letter, arriving specifically during the week of the movie's premiere, suggests that the president or his staff were aware of the significance of this moment for both Falk personally and for the character's place in American entertainment history. After 6 decades of creating stories about the purple-suited hero, seeing The Phantom finally reach the big screen represented the culmination of Falk's life's work and his lasting contribution to the superhero genre. Clinton's gesture was especially notable because it represented official recognition from the highest office in the country of the cultural importance of comic strips and their creators in shaping American storytelling traditions. The letter acknowledged not just the commercial success of the character, but also Falk's role in pioneering many of the visual and narrative conventions that would later become standard elements in superhero comics and movies, including the skin-tight costume and masked identity that influenced countless characters that followed. Zane's head was shaved for costume. Fit. Billy Zane made one of the most dramatic personal sacrifices for his role as the Phantom when he decided to completely shave off all of his hair to ensure that the character's distinctive purple cowl would fit as snugly and perfectly as possible against his head. This wasn't a minor trim or styling adjustment, but rather a complete removal of his hair that fundamentally changed his appearance and created significant logistical challenges for the entire production schedule. The decision to shave his head came from Zane's commitment to making the Phantom costume look as authentic and comic book accurate as possible, since any bulk or unevenness from hair underneath the tight-fitting cowl would have created visible bumps or distortions that would have undermined the sleek, superhero appearance that the character required. The purple hood was designed to fit extremely close to the actor's head, creating the smooth, mask-like silhouette that was essential to the Phantom's iconic look from the comic strips. This dramatic hairstyle change created a major scheduling challenge for director Simon Windsor and the production team, because it meant that every single scene featuring Kit Walker with a full head of hair had to be completed before Zane underwent his head-shaving transformation. The filming schedule had to be carefully organized so that all of the civilian identity scenes were shot first, since there would be no way to convincingly show Kit Walker with normal hair once Zane had committed to the bald look required for the superhero sequences. The level of dedication that Zane showed by making this significant physical change demonstrates just how seriously he took the role and how committed he was to achieving the most authentic possible portrayal of Lee Falk's character. This kind of extreme physical transformation for a costume requirement shows the lengths that actors sometimes go to in order to bring comic book characters to life on screen with complete visual accuracy. A fake muscle suit became unnecessary. The costume department for the Phantom initially prepared for Billy Zane's physical transformation by creating a Batman-style padded muscle suit that would give him the imposing superhero physique that the character required. But Zane's dedication to physical fitness made this elaborate costume piece completely unnecessary by the time filming began. The padded suit featured molded fake muscles similar to those used in other superhero movies of the era, designed to give actors an instantly heroic appearance without requiring months of grueling physical preparation. However, Zane took a dramatically different approach to preparing for the role, committing himself to an 18-month fitness regimen that was far more intense and comprehensive than what most actors would consider reasonable for a single movie role. His workout routine involved 3 hours of training every single day, 6 days per week, combining weight training, aerobics, and martial arts under the guidance of a personal trainer who helped him develop the kind of muscular physique that would look authentic in the skin-tight purple costume. Zane himself described his fitness routine as involving weight training, aerobics, martial arts, and what he jokingly referred to as good deeds, demonstrating both his commitment to the physical demands of the role and his sense of humor about the intensive preparation process. This level of dedication went far beyond what the production team had expected from their lead actor, as most superhero movies at the time relied heavily on padded costumes and special effects to create the illusion of superhuman physical strength. By the time filming commenced, Zane had transformed his body so completely that the expensive padded muscle suit became entirely redundant, sitting unused in the costume department while Zane filled out the Phantom's purple outfit with his own genuinely developed musculature. This transformation was so dramatic that it became immediately apparent in the early shirtless scenes filmed in the Skull Cave, where Zane's impressive physical conditioning was clearly visible and added authentic believability to his portrayal of the legendary ghost who walks. A wolf crashed the Swedish premiere. One of the most unusual premiere incidents in movie history occurred at the Stockholm screening of The Phantom, where a wolf-like dog named Maja, who had been serving as the promotional stand-in for Devil, the Phantom's loyal animal companion, found herself at the center of an unexpected confrontation at the exclusive after-party held at Café Opera. Maja had been an important part of the film's marketing campaign in Sweden, appearing at various promotional events to help generate excitement for the movie among Swedish audiences who had a particularly strong connection to the Phantom character through their popular comic magazine called Phantomen. The situation became comedic when the after-party bouncer, apparently unaware of Maja's celebrity status and promotional role in the film's marketing campaign, refused to allow the animal entry into the upscale venue with a firm declaration that dog can't come in here. This created an awkward standoff at the entrance, as Maja was clearly expected to attend the celebration and had been specifically invited as part of the promotional activities surrounding the premiere event. The crisis was quickly resolved when Mats Jonsson, a member of the Phantomen editorial staff who understood both Maja's importance to the marketing campaign and her official status as an invited guest, stepped in to clarify the situation with the confused bouncer. Jonsson's response became legendary among Swedish Phantom fans when he calmly but firmly corrected the security guard by explaining, "It's not a dog, it's a wolf, and she's on the guest list." This incident highlights the unique cultural significance that the Phantom held in Sweden, where the character had developed such a devoted following that a promotional animal could become a genuine celebrity in her own right. The fact that Maja was considered important enough to warrant inclusion on the official guest list for a major movie premiere demonstrates the lengths that international distributors went to in order to properly honor the character's legacy in different markets around the world. The butler's name honored the creators. Hidden within the seemingly minor character details of the Phantom lies a thoughtful tribute to the two men most responsible for bringing the ghost who walks to life in the comic strips that inspired the movie. The Palmer family butler, who appears in several scenes throughout the film serving the wealthy newspaper publishing family, bears the name Falkmore, which represents a clever combination of the surnames of the Phantom's original creator and his first artist. Lee Falk created the Phantom character in 1936 and wrote the comic strip stories that established the character's mythology, personality, and adventures for decades, making him the creative force behind everything that audiences recognize about the purple-suited hero. Ray Moore served as the first artist to draw the Phantom comic strip, working alongside Falk to establish the visual style and distinctive appearance that would define the character's look in newspapers around the world for generations of readers. The decision to honor both creators through this character name demonstrates the filmmakers' genuine respect for the source material and their awareness of the collaborative nature of comic strip creation, where writers and artists work together to bring characters to life. Rather than simply acknowledging one creator over the other, the combined name Falkmore recognizes that both the storytelling and visual elements were essential to making the Phantom the enduring character that he became. This type of tribute was particularly meaningful, given that both Falk and Moore had been working on the Phantom for 60 years by the time the movie was released, representing one of the longest creative partnerships in comic strip history. The Butler's name serves as a subtle but permanent acknowledgement within the film itself of the debt that the movie owed to these two creative pioneers who had spent their careers developing and refining the character that Billy Zane would eventually bring to life on the big screen. It was originally written as a spoof. The Phantom that audiences eventually saw in theaters was dramatically different from what screenwriter Jeffrey Boehm originally envisioned when he first began developing the script for Paramount Pictures in the early 1990s. Boehm's initial approach to the material was far more comedic and self-aware, as he wrote his original screenplay as a tongue-in-cheek spoof that would have poked fun at the conventions of superhero stories and adventure serials rather than playing them straight. This comedic approach made perfect sense, given Boehm's previous work on successful action-adventure films like Inner Space, which had successfully blended humor with exciting set pieces, and his collaboration with director Joe Dante, who was known for his ability to balance genuine thrills with clever parody elements in movies like Gremlins and The Howling. Dante and Boehm worked together to develop a version of the Phantom that would have been much more satirical and humorous than the earnest adventure film that eventually reached theaters. The most dramatic example of how different this early version would have been can be seen in the climactic sequence that Dante and Boehm originally planned, which featured the Phantom engaging in a supernatural battle against a winged demon rather than the more grounded confrontation with human villains that appears in the final film. This demonic antagonist would have pushed the story firmly into fantasy territory and created opportunities for the kind of over-the-top special effects sequences that Dante specialized in creating. However, when Paramount Pictures decided to delay the film's production by a full year, Dante left the project to pursue other commitments, eventually ending up credited as one of the executive producers rather than as the director. The studio brought in Simon Windsor to replace Dante, and the new director worked with Boehm to reshape the script into the more straightforward, old-fashioned adventure story that emphasized sincere heroism rather than comedic parody of superhero conventions. Filming wrapped exactly 60 years after comic debut in one of the most remarkable coincidences in movie production history. The Phantom wrapped principal photography on February 13, 1996. Which fell almost exactly 60 years to the day after Lee Falk's purple-suited hero first appeared in American newspaper comics on February 17, 1936. This timing was so precise that it created an almost poetic sense of completion, as if the character's journey from comic strip panels to live-action cinema had come full circle after 6 decades of entertaining readers around the world. The original Phantom comic strip debuted as a daily newspaper feature on that winter day in 1936, introducing readers to the concept of a masked crime fighter who operated from a mysterious jungle location and fought against pirates, criminals, and various forms of injustice. Over the following 60 years, the Phantom had become one of the longest-running and most widely distributed comic strips in the world, appearing in newspapers across multiple continents and being translated into dozens of languages for international audiences. The fact that filming concluded so close to this anniversary was purely coincidental rather than planned, as movie production schedules are typically determined by practical considerations like location availability, weather conditions, and actor commitments rather than symbolic dates. However, the timing created a meaningful sense of historical continuity that connected the original comic strip creation with its big-screen adaptation, spanning exactly 6 decades of American popular culture. This 60-year journey from newspaper comics to Hollywood blockbuster represented the evolution of superhero entertainment from simple daily comic strips that cost a few cents to major motion pictures with budgets of tens of millions of dollars. The timing also meant that Lee Falk, who was still alive and actively involved with the character at the time of the movie's production, was able to witness his creation complete this remarkable transformation from print to cinema after dedicating most of his professional career to developing and refining the character. Zane credits it for landing Titanic role. Billy Zane has consistently maintained that his role as the Phantom served as the crucial stepping stone that led directly to his casting as the wealthy and villainous Cal Hockley in James Cameron's Titanic, which went on to become the highest-grossing film in cinema history at the time of its release in 1997. According to Zane himself, the physical transformation he underwent for the Phantom and the screen presence he developed while portraying the purple-suited hero caught the attention of Cameron, who was searching for an actor who could convincingly portray a privileged aristocrat with an underlying capacity for cruelty and violence. The timing of these two films worked perfectly in Zane's favor, as The Phantom was released in June of 1996, giving Cameron and his casting team the opportunity to see Zane's performance and physical transformation on the big screen while they were in the process of assembling the cast for Titanic. Zane's portrayal of the heroic Kit Walker demonstrated his ability to handle both action sequences and romantic scenes, while his impressive physical conditioning from his 18 months of intensive training showed that he could convincingly portray characters who possessed both physical strength and commanding screen presence. The connection between these two roles becomes even more interesting when considering how different the characters were in terms of morality and motivation, yet both required Zane to project authority, physical capability, and a certain aristocratic bearing that would make him believable as someone from wealthy, privileged backgrounds. His work as the Phantom proved that he could handle large-scale action filmmaking and work effectively within the demands of major studio productions. Zane's casting as Cal Hockley ultimately earned him recognition on a much larger scale than the Phantom had provided, as Titanic became a global phenomenon that introduced him to audiences worldwide and demonstrated his effectiveness as a screen villain in one of the most successful films ever made.